Oh, Travis, what a
Hi, Dennis. Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
All right. Thank you for leaning in on that as we're getting our camera shot and figuring out what we're doing. Tell me about that piece.
Yes, so that piece is actually the first piece of my debut collection with my publishing house, Piano Pronto Publications.
Yes.
It's a title called Picking Lilacs, and the collection of piano solos is a piece for each of a certain flower. And so each of the pieces is named after a certain specific flower.
Your introduction, what was your love for this instrument that you have? What connected you to that? Can you take me back historically? How old are you today? This is 2021. We're in July. You're how old?
I'm 32.
All right, you're 32. So when I'm 73, and so when did you connect with that instrument?
So I actually started playing piano when I was 4. So it's been a good long time.
Could you remember that? I mean, can you sense memory back
Oh,
to
yeah.
feeling the
Yes.
pressure of the keys and that was there something there?
I even tell some of my students that I remember my first piece that I played when I was 4. And it's just remarkable to see that growth when you start as a child and you're
Yes.
kind of just discovering music, for the first time. To
Wow.
like when you seriously, if you take that path of studying music,
Right.
it evolves, and it evolves rather quickly. You can especially see it, for me, the evolution really started to take flight when I was in middle school around like 12 years old.
Uh-huh.
12, 13, 14, those years are crucial for just development. But
And
it's
that's why, I
definitely
mean,
been a
did you
journey.
see a growth then at that time? And when you're seeing an artist, and so is it taking it from the inside? So can you tell me what did that feel like? What did that feel like to feel you beginning to get into some experiences of some, you know, touching this genius, this mastery part, that part of where something that is magical beyond what we would like. All right. I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't play the piano.
No,
So
no, it's
tell
fine.
me
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yes.
What?
So for myself, I mean, this all started off because, I mean, I will be the first to admit I'm not the most like athletic type of person. So sports were kind of out of the question when I was a kid,
Right.
but I needed something to, do for, some sort of hobby or something to keep my mind occupied.
Right.
So, my mother started me off in piano lessons as a child, not originally thinking that this would be something that I would stick with. It was probably just going to be something we do, and then maybe I would find something else later down the line.
Sure.
So we stuck with it for a bit. And I am just so grateful. By the time that I got into middle school, I had discovered a really fantastic teacher and a fantastic private instructor by the time I was in like 11, 12 years old, which really opened my eyes and my ears to serious classical repertoire and seriously talking about like piano technique, how to
Yeah.
approach the instrument in a musical way, and really opening my eye to appreciating it more. Because before this point, it's just a lot of, playing through your pieces, you do your little student recitals and we call it a day. And finally, for the first time, I have somebody that's like really making me dig deeper, even as a middle school
Oh,
student, how are you going to personally express yourself through this instrument? And moreover, how are you going to express these pieces and make it yours? And I
yeah.
was like, okay. And admittedly, this didn't come without a lot of vigorous study.
Sure.
And I think, as young musicians need to be reminded, and as I tell my students a lot too, I mean, there's no real shortcut to doing this. A lot of people come through and be like, hey, I want to get good at this instrument. Can you give me like the quick and easy way of how to do it? And the answer is no, I don't have an easy solution for you. Or the easy solution is, yeah, sure. Study really, really hard, find yourself a really, really strong teacher, and really apply yourself. Yeah.
And put your ass on the bench and your
Yes.
fingers on the keys, right?
True. Yeah. And truthfully, I mean, I don't practice as much as I used to, although back in like my middle school and high school years, it was maybe 2 to 4 hours, depending.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you put in your
And
time.
all right, so then there has to be a movement of creating. All right,
Yes.
so first you're replicating,
Mhm.
doing the work, and now something comes. I need to create. I
Mhm.
want to be able to tell me that journey.
So I was really fortunate that I went to a magnet school in high school that specialized in technology. It also
Hmm.
specialized in business, law, graphic design, things like that. I was a computer science major at the time
Sure.
in high school, and we had
Or you're never not a computer science major. Once you start a community, it's like you never get out of it. You
oh wow.
understand that there's going to be this wonderful journey.
And it's a journey too, and like just even seeing the evolution of that as well. So we had website design classes, and we had programming classes, and it just so happened on an off chance that one of my classes in web design, someone had installed music composition software on one of the school computers, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that it wasn't meant to happen. And like I came in the next day, and I'm sitting at my website design computer, and I was like, what is this? I was like, this is a new program. Clicked on it, and it was like this music composition software where you could just use your typing keys to like play notes and try different instruments. I was hooked. For that rest of the week, I got nothing
Oh.
done. I was like, okay, you know what? Forget anything about school. This right here is going to be my focus for like the next, I don't know how long. So, it started with that. I ended up getting that program on my desktop computer at the time. I bought
Yeah.
myself some janky little, 61 key Casio keyboard, hooked myself up to
Nice.
hooked myself up to USB and started writing that way without any real training and just kind of going
Yeah.
off with instinct, which I think is a nice way to start because, your creativity is not really limited if somebody doesn't tell you that there are rules. So to start off, I didn't really know what I was doing, you know. Um,
What an
and
interesting route, because many times they tell you learn everything and then you break the rules.
true,
You
yes,
you operated it the other way. Break all the rules, then go back and learn the technique.
to start, yes. So I was doing that for a couple years. In my undergrad years, I actually switched from classical piano to jazz studies
Uh-huh.
at the local University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where I had a
Sure.
fantastic jazz instructor, and that opened my ears even more
And did they
because
notice? Now, I know you had teachers, but let's
yeah,
let's also flip it from the other side. Did they notice that there was something in you that they wanted to bring out? Did they nurture you in that way? How are you nurtured? Because some people are nurtured by negative reinforcement. I'm one of the people that has to be nurtured by positive reinforcement. Encourage me, and I will grow. Other people are they tell you, they say, just tell me I can't do it, and by God, I'll show you wrong. I'm not one of those people. But anyway, how did they nurture you?
What I love about the jazz studies program at the college that I attended is that even if you go in as a jazz performance major, you're
Hmm.
not strictly like tied to just doing jazz performance. They kind of
Sure.
still, what am I trying to say? They want you to blossom and kind of dip your hands into as many pots as you can. So you're encouraged to do composition if you'd
Sure.
like to, So I didn't really, understand what I was getting myself into at first. And then
Do
I
we
started,
ever?
right. And I started, offhand, I started writing, some jazz tunes, not thinking much of it at first. And my jazz instructor was like, you know what? I think you should go further with this. So by the time senior year rolled around, I had, a steady stream of jazz lead sheets that I had written. And so we put together a recital of that, so even coming as a jazz performance major, you end up performing, your own compositions, your own
Okay.
arrangements. And I was like,
Turn
okay.
turn around and give us a minute or a minute of what that would have sounded like, so we can have some audio to go with it. What would that time have sounded like?
Sure
Can you
thing. Yeah,
play?
I'll just go ahead and play a little bit for you. Yeah.
Oh, that is wonderful. Now you say that you weren't athletic, but it requires a great deal of eye to hand to do what you're doing. So is it I mean, that is athleticism.
I mean, looking back at it now that I'm older, yes. I mean, it does take a insane amount of, concentration, a lot of technical training too.
Yes.
My best teachers, even when I was in high school, they stressed the importance of relaxation when you're playing, but still having strength in the fingers. You want to make sure that you're playing without tension, which is very difficult for students to grasp. I always tell my students, it's easy to play the piano. I mean, the
Yeah.
action of playing the piano is not difficult. And in that respect, anybody could play the instrument. It's difficult to play the instrument well.
All right. So when in playing and going ahead and playing and learning, all right. So now the journey is here. Are
Yeah,
you ready to get into film score? Did that? All right. Hold on a second. I
sure.
didn't ask the right question that I
No, it's
wanted to
okay.
ask. First thing I want to ask is what else were you listening to outside of the genre of classical music that inspired you? That obviously everything informs, but what kinds of things were you listening to as a teen that were outside of that?
Oh man, this is a great question. Thanks so much for asking it, Dennis. Because music, obviously we hear that phrase a lot of, music is a universal language and everything. And it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, you can communicate with musicians all over the world as we speak this common, musical language. And, it's important as a musician, I feel, to kind of listen to as much music as you can, as many genres as you can. I have an affinity for old progressive rock, but new progressive rock. I also listen to progressive metal bands, but I was listening to
Nice.
heavily a lot of jazz music, a lot of film score music as well. I keep all of it on my phone, so it's just always it's heavily rotated all the time, where I can just go back to my favorite albums, my favorite scores. And being a musician, I think I kind of approach listening in a different way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to turn my brain off and just there's the listening for enjoyment, but then there's the listening for actively trying to figure out what's going on. And
Got
so
it.
for me, I try to, sometimes I have to balance that out. It's very difficult for me to do that. I've noticed as of recently too, if I'm like watching a movie,
Hmm.
sometimes that musician brain in me will gravitate towards like, oh, that chord progression's going from here to there, and the strings are doing this line, and I hear that French horn that's entering here. That's really cool. And I have to take myself out of that because it puts me in a different mindset where I'm like, I just
Totally.
missed everything that happened. I have no idea what just occurred, but I figured out that part, and that's really cool, But some of my favorite groups, I was a heavy Dream Theater fan back in my 11, 12 years. I actually
Yeah.
picked up their first album at a garage sale one day. I didn't realize what I was buying. I just bought it for the cover art. I was like, that cover art's really cool. I think I want that. So I just bought it. And I was hooked. Other groups, Genesis, Kansas, Porcupine Tree, things like that.
Nice.
Jazz artists that I have an affinity for are the guys that also cross over into the classical realm too. So like Keith Jarrett, who plays both jazz and classical really, really well. And that's difficult to find someone who can kind of navigate both genres with equal skill.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, all right. So now, as you're moving on, and are you saying, okay, this is my career? I have. Did you make a conscious decision of that? And what happened?
I didn't know if it was going to be possible to do a career. Obviously, I mean, like I love film and I love
Hmm.
music, and it's the one thing I've noticed that music schools don't seem to touch on much is what are you going to do once you get the degree? I found
Right.
myself thinking about this more now as I'm looking back. If I was like, what would I tell myself now? Coming from my future self here,
Right.
what would I tell myself about, what are you going to try to focus on for a
Exactly.
career? And I think as a musician, the biggest advice I would tell myself would be, have as many skill sets as you can,
Hmm.
and be ready to take on as many musical related jobs as you can. you know,
Ah,
whether it's a
because
composition.
there's an entire world within the music, including the graphic
Yeah.
arts, as you said,
Mhm.
with with that album art. You would not have touched that album art had that album had there not been art that compelled you to do so.
So what's really cool? Oh yeah, thanks for mentioning the album too. But yeah. So yes, correct. Yeah, that's like something that I looked at and I was like, hey, you know what? I was like, it looks really interesting. I don't know what I'm going to get myself into listening
Yeah.
to, but you know, it something drove me to picking up that album.
All right, I want to ask you specifically about that. Okay, now because
Sure,
I want to separate the intellectual from the intuitional.
sure, fair enough.
Because that has to be a part of that. And when did you begin to trust that and trust? Wait a minute, because where the hell do ideas come from? I don't know. They pop in fully formed into my brain. Do compositions drop in fully formed? Have you made a connection with this space that is beyond the intellectual?
Yeah.
But that
So yeah, my biggest ideas, or the ideas that come easiest to me, I always have my phone ready to go with an audio recorder on it, just in case like I need to either hum an idea or play an idea quickly at the piano that I can come back to. Um, a lot of the times ideas have come when I'm out on a walk, or sometimes I'll be like napping and
Mhm.
something will pop into my mind, which then I have to go and jot it down as quickly as I can before
Yeah.
it escapes. But you know, it's interesting where they form, and it's not always melodic either. Sometimes it's a rhythmical pattern or idea that pops in, and I don't have any idea specifically
Yeah.
note wise. I just know it's a rhythmical thing, so I'll have to go and take it down, you know,
Yeah.
like that. They
All
can
right,
come in
do
at
it.
any time.
Demonstrate something. What would that sound like? Just the
Sure.
bare beginnings of something that would just kind of tickle into your mind.
Yeah. So like maybe I'll be fooling around. I'll be like, oh, you know, I might hear a groove in my mind that I can be like, and just kind of working with that, you know, and fooling around. You know, that's kind of where everything's kind of coming in all at once, where it's like the harmony I'm kind of hearing, but then like trying to figuring out, you know, a rhythmical groove that I'm capturing in my mind, you know, to
Oh, all right. So now you're there and you're looking at all the ways that you can both make a living and to be able to contribute into this. And what
yeah.
happens?
So I actually started doing short indie films when I was in college, and it was kind of like short films for the film college for
Sure.
students that needed music done. And the one thing that I noticed is, you know, our music department and our film department are very close in terms of proximity within each other, but there's not much collaboration that gets done between the two departments for whatever
Oh
reason
my
that might be.
goodness, missed opportunity. Are you kidding
So,
me?
you know, and to be fair, I mean, like a lot of these film projects too. I mean, nobody really comes over asking for music either. So that's another thing.
Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, so I noticed, like, you know, with a lot of these film festivals, and which I would dutifully attend because I mean, I love movies, you know,
Yeah.
regardless for what they are. And I noticed a lot of them didn't have scores, or it would be like they would have, you know, stock music tossed in,
Exactly.
which is a completely different experience. It can work to a degree.
Yeah.
It doesn't work exactly the same as having a custom score written for what's happening. And so, you know, I was very fortunate that one of my old high school buddies, who was actually going to college at the time for a film major, he was like, "Hey, do you want to do this for me? I have a short film project. Can you score it for me?" And this
Yeah.
was having zero experience at all. And I was like, you know what? I do. I want to do this because I want to see if I can actually get it done, you know,
Nice.
and actually take the challenge of it. I'm always for, you know, trying to see, you know, what are my limits, or how can I expand my limits and see what I can, you know, do. So it was a great challenge, but it fueled some sort of fire in me to want to take more visual media
Yeah.
projects. I was hooked, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And then you began going into that,
Mhm.
and did you begin approaching, because I mean you've been in film festivals, you've gotten a chance to how are you approaching it, and how are you approaching that as a career?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate in the fact that a lot of these directors that I've met, I've formed pretty good relationships with over the years. Some of these
Hmm.
people are people I went to college with. Some of these people I've networked over Facebook with, and that's how some of those films got into various festivals and
Sure.
such. My favorite project as of thus far is, and I tell this story a lot. The director didn't give any sort of temp music or anything for the initial project. So there wasn't any music for me to go off of, which I like a lot. And
Hmm.
temp music, for those that don't know, is when the director kind of cuts music into the film already. It kind of has placeholder, and it's like, hey, can you write something like this? And it presents a problem too, because then
Sure.
you're constantly referencing that, and it
Exactly.
becomes less of a composition towards the film and more of an imitation to what's already being there, you
Got
know?
it.
And so that was one of my favorite experiences where it's like, hey, we need we need some music for this horror short film that we're doing. I want you to just go on it and
Yeah.
just see what you come up with. Okay, this is great. I can kind of just do whatever I want to and see what sticks, and what doesn't stick.
How cool. So, all right. So we have about 10 hours worth of conversation just to be able of
Yeah,
the kind of questions I would love to ask. But
of
tell
course.
me a little bit about what's happening today. What is on your brain? What kinds of things are cogitating? What kind of projects are you in the middle of? What in this growth journey? Because that's what we were talking about the from 4 years old on to today. Where are you in this arc right now? The kinds of problems artistic problems you're trying to solve, the things that you're curious about.
Sure thing. So, a couple projects that I'm currently involved in. I am finishing my second collection of piano solos for my Piano Pronto publishing house.
Hmm.
And the first piece that I played, it was from this Sonic Bouquet collection right there. So, this was the first book that I
Nice.
put out. The second book is more
So you're a
personal to me.
publishing. So you have a publishing house. So
Yeah.
you're basically
Yeah, so I write for a publishing house. I was very fortunate to get accepted by them in
exactly.
2016. And this one here was about a 3.5 year labor of love because I am slow when it comes to writing, and that's okay. And then the second book that I'm doing is more personal to me because it is a collection of piano solos, which is written in the style of composers that I just admire and adore and have had a significant impact on me. So I'm doing pieces in the style of them.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were like saying, okay, I'm going to paint this series of paintings in the style
Yeah.
of Renoir,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
in or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the book is called Portraits, so I call each one a certain portrait of a composer. So we're doing stuff like that. That's for the second book. I've got 4 of them done so far, and we got 4 more to do. So it's going to be
How
a lot of fun.
cool.
Yeah. And then a big thing that's coming up is I'm finally doing the release of my debut album in December, which I've been working on for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a 3 movement suite of orchestral and electronic music kind of merged together that I've been kind of putting together since 2016 in summer. So
Wonderful. So do you get to write for the different instruments? Is it a challenge to write for something that is not a piano? How does that work? Being completely ignorant, you're basically talking to an alien.
yeah,
So
no. So nowadays, with a lot of composition, it's done via computer. So I have in my other nearby room my big workstation, and it's rigged up with all these orchestral sounds that are ready to go that I can kind of record at the tips of my fingers and playing every part in, and kind of tracking, double tracking, and kind of layering one on top of each other. It's kind of like building a house.
sure,
Yeah, yeah.
excellent. And that's what. All right. And so what is a day in? July of 2021. What is a day
Yeah.
like on Travis? Do you get up early and then start? I mean, give me is there a typical kind of a pattern that you're doing?
Yeah, there's a typical pattern, and I mean, and I'm a night owl too, so there's times when I'll work until like 1:30 in the
Hmm.
morning, but then
Hmm.
there's times where I still try to be regimented and wake up at around like 8, and I'll get some piano practice in first. Uh, I always try to balance the self-care aspect as well, which is something that I've been trying to focus on more, which
Oh,
is like,
thank
getting
goodness.
outside, going for a run, enjoying nature, because that actually helps with the creative aspect. Go figure, right?
No, it is. It is the obsession. We can get so involved in the obsession that we can't get an opportunity to release it to give more space for other ideas to come in.
Right. Spending your time in the studio all the time. I mean, admittedly, it's probably not the healthiest of things to
Right.
do. And
Right.
getting outside and just, communing with nature is really important to me,
Right.
because I mean, it just lets you, have those ideas flow. And then, if I'm working on a project, like say my upcoming piano works or whatnot, if I'm already having some ideas down, I like to go back and revisit whatever I've recorded on my phone, noodle around here.
Sure.
Taking frequent breaks too, I think, is important. I remember one of my most influential piano teachers when I was in high school. She always told me, I wouldn't recommend pianists to practice, 4 to 6 hours a day on a steady, no break
Yeah.
schedule, because I mean, there is some harm that can come to that, and eventually your return on investment on something like that
You
drastically
just
diminishes.
diminish it.
Yeah. You can
Totally.
do 4 to 6 hours if you
Sure.
break it up into 2-hour stretches. There's nothing wrong with that, but eventually, like when you start to you go like 6 hours at a time,
Right.
you run the risk of injuring yourself, or just mentally.
Absolutely. And injuring your psyche.
Hmm. Mhm. Yeah,
Because I mean,
definitely.
we need that space. I mean, we need that space just like in a conversation. We need space just like between the notes. You need space, right? I mean,
Yes.
isn't there that magic between the notes? So
That
musicians
yeah.
tell me.
The silence is golden. Sometimes you don't need to have notes all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is why some of my most favorite works are not chock full of movement and chock full of
yeah.
a lot of busyness. I mean, it could be as simple
Please.
as yeah, it could be as simple as a couple chords. And kind of just
Ah,
going between certain harmonies, and even just things like that just kind of shimmer, and there's certain sounds that over the years I've kind of just gravitated towards, and I know, like,
yeah,
those are the type of sounds that I like. It's something that you know it mentally affects me, but it physically affects me as
yeah.
well. I mean, and just hearing those kind of it really just brings some sort of excitement to me.
What other kinds of artistry are you practicing at the current time? Are you filmmaking? Are you writing films? Are you sculpting? Are you paint? What are the things you're doing outside of music?
So, I mean, for myself, I'd love to touch more into film making, which I haven't really done that much. But what I've enjoyed doing, outside of music, is a lot of like just creative writing, creative journaling. I've done
Hmm.
a lot of like, if I wasn't going to be a musician, my second career choice would end up being like, creative writing for like entertainment,
There you
articles,
go.
music industry articles. Back when I was in college, I did a lot of arts and entertainment journalism for like
Yep.
concert reviews and stuff like that. I like doing that. Something
Well, that's
about
a
just putting the
wonderful.
pen.
But
Yeah,
see, Tony Bennett is
yeah,
an extraordinary artist. I very
Yep.
seldom do you see an artist that is only monodimensional in their art. So the fact that you would have other areas that you would be investing in your time is totally cogent to me.
It's so awesome that you mentioned Tony Bennett, because on my playlist on my phone is the Tony Bennett and Bill Evans collection, where they just do duets together, and I'm just, oh my god, those albums I could just go back to like all the time. I
Yeah.
was like, look at oh man, like it's two people, that's all you need, piano and voice, and it's just magical.
Oh, all right. Now tell me about Mickey.
Oh, yeah. So this is Conductor Mickey, and Conductor Mickey is one of my, he's so cool. This was a gift from my church choir director, because I also play organ and piano at church for my other job that I do on Sunday services, which I'm so fortunate to have. And this was a Christmas present for, it's like just one of my most favorite things that I have.
Isn't it? And it's lovely to be able to have to be able to have that, and to be able
Yes.
to know where you're going. All right,
Yes.
what haven't we talked about that you'd like to talk about today? Help me reach inside the consciousness of Travis Lohmann.
Sure thing. So something that I've been thinking and reflecting on about a lot is, we go to music school, and we're taught the basics of music theory, and we learned a lot about music theory, and just what to do and how to approach writing and such. And then it's like, you have all this knowledge, and what are you going to do with it in your compositions? And it seems to me that I've been finding that I've been leaning towards my ear a lot more too with writing, not necessarily using music theory as gospel rule, but more using it as, if I get into a bind, or if I can't figure my way out of a problem, then I can kind of circumnavigate back and use what I've learned to get myself out of a situation.
All right. So it is a problem. I mean, there are mathematics involved.
Yes,
There are
yes.
artistic involved. So it's one of the things that I love about being a musical neophyte, because I grooved to television. So as a child, I began and just completely got absorbed in television. Yes, I understand that so much of the things that I appreciate and that really lift to me have a music score that. So I'm understanding that much more now, but I'm very visual oriented. So I'm getting a chance to learn this, and to learn about the scope of the scope of this through you. So and thank you so much for the opportunity, Travis, to meet you now.
Yeah.
And to be able to see where you're going, and what you're doing, and what kind of input that you're giving into the world, and what you're giving back to us.
You're so welcome, Dennis. I mean, it's like, I think it's important, especially as a musician, and reflecting on the younger generation that's coming up that might want to do this type of profession.
Sure.
I think it's important to be realistic with them, but also give them hope with, what's to be expected in the industry. It's not something
Exactly.
that really gets talked about much. As I mentioned before, it's kind of like, you want to be a music major, you go through all the hoops of getting your degree, and then you're not really sure where you're going to go after that. And learning all that knowledge, and knowing how to practically use it.
Exactly. And also to be able to say, wait a minute, the world of 2021 is different from the world of 2000, of when we were. So if we can create this, if we can create artistic bubbles, ways that an artist can touch enough of an audience in order to be sustained, in order to be able to be creative, that's what we're looking at. With my producer and director and partner, Renée Yaworsky, that's what we're doing with our network. It's we're creating it as a model, and so we get to have you, John Baptiste, Are you familiar with him?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to use you as our entry to get him.
Aw.
So
That's awesome.
this is I am as proud to have the opportunity to spend time with you as I would be with him. You have many of the same beautiful qualities. You have a graciousness and a warmth and a kindness and an engagement that he has. And so when I got a chance to see some of your work beforehand and to do that,
Oh.
I went, hey, I'm getting John Baptiste now. So I'll go.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I recently watched the movie Soul, and obviously, I mean, he did like a lot of the piano work on
Right.
that. And, oh man, what a film!
Just what
I was like,
amazing.
they finally made a film about a jazz educator who ends up going into this other dimension, and just the music carried that thing so well. Oh Lord.
Yeah. So we have anyway, Travis. Thank you so much for today, and may we have in the future another space in your time so that we can see where you are at that time and how we're going forward.
Absolutely, I would be so happy to do that.
Right, and in your background, is your racial background Asian Pacific Islander background? What is your background?
Right. So my dad is German, and then my mom is actually from Taiwan. So I kind of get the best of both worlds.
That is terrific. What a great opportunity to be able to do it. Because we are.
Definitely.
I mean, this is a global. I mean, this is what a wonderful global time that we're that we're having. Travis, thank you so much. We will check into you as soon as we get this package. This was our live version. Then
Yes.
we're going to package it into reasonably spontaneous conversation, and we'll have that there, and we'll have it for you to be able to share, and the opportunity to be able to connect with you the next time.
Sure thing. So do you want some playing out music?
Oh, you're damn right.
All right, here we go. Oh man.
And scene. All right.